everything else, has an announcement.
Many of you remember Jim and Michelle Sullivan years ago when they were here as our missionaries. And they are visiting us today. And they're from Montana. So we are so pleased to have you. And you'll be here a couple of days, I think? All right, so the men that come on Tuesday night, Jim said he would try to make it Tuesday night and give us his expert thoughts about the church.
Luke,
All right,
Luke,
ready to go.
did Jim used to preach up to a church in Montana?
Jim,
I'm sorry, what was that?
did you used to preach at a church in Montana?
I speak occasionally, but we've been with the church there in Great Falls, Montana.
Great.
Yeah, about.
I think that's what it was. I think we were there one Sunday. God bless them. Yeah. Long time ago.
Long time ago.
We're glad to have you.
All right, that's great. Great to have y'all down. And you're going back to the cold.
It's gonna be warm when we get back, so we're.
Hey, Leroy says hi. Everybody say hello, Leroy.
Rhonda and I lived up that way, not in Montana, but in Wyoming for a few years, and loved that part of the country. It's just amazing, and want to go back and visit someday, but great time up there. Okay, well, good morning.
Morning.
We're ready to get going again here. Did all of you get a handout today? We have them up here. If you didn't get a handout, we have quite a few left. If you'd like one, we're not gonna force it on you or anything. So you'll see we did the background. I'll show you the background on our slides is different today. I'm slowly increasing on my PowerPoint skills. Very excited about that. A lot of you have asked, when are you going to have some slides for us in church and with the sermon? And Rhonda has asked that. She likes slides. But what you don't understand is it takes me 3 times as long doing slides as what it takes me to get the sermon ready. It is, there's more to that, but now David Bailey has it where we can do picture-in-picture up there. So as I'm walking the aisles, we can have a slide going. So we will eventually get there. It's just the bad thing is I have my notes. I go by my notes for the most part, but sometimes I don't. And whoever's doing the slides doesn't know where I am. And so we have to fix those glitches, but we will get there.
Where's your boat? Oh.
It's actually my boat. David, don't go to it right now because I know how squirrely you are. The very last slide today is my boat. So we'll see my former boat. What you guests don't realize is my boat sank in Hurricane Sally. And everyone here gets the biggest thrill out of that. They're so delighted. And they hope I'm hurrying up and get another one so another hurricane can come through and sink that one so they can be all giddy again. Meet my friends. Just kidding. I'm kidding, David. Okay, so here we are. We're back in Habakkuk. Let's go on the next slide here. A couple of questions for you. When do people go through a crisis of faith? And secondly, what can we do to get through the crisis? Crisis of faith. Seems like we're talking about faith today in the sermon, right? So when do people go through a crisis? When do you feel like your faith is being drained? And what do you do about it?
When we don't,
Bad things?
we don't stay near to God.
When we don't stay near to God? Ma'am?
Anyway, like, yeah, when they were saying like bad situations, I was gonna say like maybe what to do. I've been like practicing this whole like count to 100 stuff when any like stressful thing might try to come and overtake any type of, peace from me or try to guide me into any type of, anxiety or anger or anything like that. And in the process of counting to 100, I take that time to find the prayer and come back to the peace of the Lord.
So you count to 100 and have prayer. You close your eyes. Driving down Highway 98, you close your eyes.
No, but you can keep your eyes
Okay.
open, like when you get to like, I feel like 70, that's when that negative thought or something that's trying to pull you away releases and leaves, and that's when you can, the prayer comes in and brings you back to the peace of the Lord.
Yes.
And casts out any of those things that try to bring you down.
That's a good answer. Thank you for that. On what do we do? Say again? No, Tiffany, I didn't.
That was a great one.
Go ahead,
When
Tiffany.
things are out of your control.
Say again?
When things are out of your control.
When things are out of your control, to go through a crisis of faith. Yeah, absolutely. We like being in control, don't we? Or we think we are, right?
Yeah.
Other thoughts on this, ma'am?
When you're around people that aren't of faith.
When you're around people that are not of faith. Yeah. So who should you be around, right? People of faith. Yeah. Y'all like coming to your Sunday support group for recovering sinners, right? So we can be here and build on each other's faith. I love being around people of faith. And, fill me back up, right?
Right.
So when do people go through a crisis of faith? Yeah, different times in our lives, things going bad, sickness, whatever, it might be a death. What can we do to get through it? And we can do exercises like was mentioned, count to 100, just pray to God, reading our Bibles, being around others. I throw it back out there to you. You're going through a difficult time, you just need to talk. You're always welcome to call me. We can talk. Okay? Set up a time. Come by the office, whatever. You're ready to talk and ready to listen. Sometimes we go through these things. Let's don't try to fool ourselves that we're some kind of super duper Christians and that we never go through things like this, because we do. We do. We have people come to church on Sundays that's oftentimes going through a crisis of faith, but they know they need to be here. And it's okay to reach out and ask for some help or just somebody to talk to, okay?
Whenever we go through crisis of faith, Billie Jean is a strong one in our family, and she prays about it, turns it over to the Lord, and she can move on. And
Wow.
It's amazing. And incidentally, she's given me to the care of my daughter. She's had enough for the week.
So my mother-in-law had enough of the sermon today, and so she left. Oh, I thought he meant you left. I'm like, that's great. Thanks, Mary. You're not in your spot. Okay.
That was close, babe. Sometimes you have to distance yourself because occasionally there's people in your life that are causing a crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you have to, even though you feel like you're being ripped apart, you have to distance yourself sometimes from that. And that's really hard, especially when you love them.
That's where we need boundaries in our life. Y'all heard what Deborah was talking about. Sometimes there's people around you that are causing you to have a crisis of faith. Those you love, maybe family or whatever like that even. And it can be difficult. It can be very, very difficult with that. As I said, you like to have boundaries, but, if they're living with you, you can't just kick them out. Oh, not talking about blue. Okay. So the prophet Habakkuk then is experiencing a crisis of faith. A little bit of a review here from last week. Habakkuk complains to God because he seems to be ignoring the flagrant sins of Israel. Injustice, violence are everywhere. God is doing nothing about it. Doesn't that aggravate you when God doesn't do anything about something, and he should be? You know it does. You're not going to go to hell for thinking that or saying that, because we oftentimes think that. God knows we're thinking that, but
Is Habakkuk having as much a crisis of faith as he is of patience?
hey, it's probably
He knows-
going hand in hand
He
here.
knows God can do it. He's just really aggravated with God's timing.
He knows he can do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he knows if he's going to do it.
He doesn't have faith in God's timing.
He doesn't have faith in God's timing. And I have a lot of problems
Yeah, I can relate
with
to
God's
that.
timing. Yeah, he just needs to understand these get done now. Not wait. It's convenient for him.
If God would just simply get on our schedule,
Amen.
that can be difficult for a lot of us. He can't. So in response to the complaint, God tells Habakkuk he's sending the Babylonians as his tool to bring justice to Israel. They will exact his will on the land and bring punishment to Israel. Habakkuk, though, is even more disturbed when he hears of God's plan. So basically, he wants something to be done. God says, here's what's going to be done. Habakkuk says, I don't like that plan. Let's go to plan B. Yeah. I haven't always liked God's plan. And, I try to see, where's God going with this? How's God leading me? How's God working in my life? And I have it all set up. And anyway, it can be difficult. So the people of Babylon are the epitome of wicked men. Why then is he causing this more wicked nation to punish a less wicked nation like Judah? Habakkuk has been upset that God seems to be tolerating the sins of Israel. God is now not only tolerating the greater sins of Babylon, but giving tacit approval of those sins by using Babylon as his tool of judgment. Yeah.
So, occasionally you hear someone say, sometimes with the pulpit, God only uses men of God. It's like, no. God will use who he pleases.
Yeah, God has used wicked people before to do his will. So in God's final response to Habakkuk, he tells the prophet to wait. Eventually, in time, all will be clearer. Justice will certainly prevail. Habakkuk 2, verse 3. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. Wait for it. It will certainly come, will not delay. Wait for it. Wait. We don't like waiting. Right? Except for judgment. At Highway 98, we don't like waiting. Go, people. Don't cut across 4 lanes of traffic because you missed your stop. Right? So, the revelation which God speaks is the coming destruction of Babylon. Their doom is certain, for God will hold them accountable just like Judah. Second half of Habakkuk, the prophet wrestles with the answers God has given, and through prayer and reflection comes to a position of trust and confidence in God. So, he's having a hard time, but then he comes around to God. Right? He may have begun with complaints and questions, but he ends with confidence and hope. That's good. So in this lesson, we examine Habakkuk's path to faith and hope in God. God contrasts the righteous and the wicked. Habakkuk 2, 4, and 5 there. Babylon reflects independent arrogance, but the righteous live by faith. Verse 4. See, the enemy is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. God, in his response to Habakkuk, previously described the arrogant pride of the Babylonians. In Habakkuk 1, verse 7, he said, they are lauding themselves and promote their own honor. Very arrogant people. The Lord focuses on that arrogance again, implying it is the source of Babylon's wickedness and the cause of their eventual demise. Have you ever noticed God does not like arrogance? God hates arrogance. That's another thing that it is easy to see that in others, but not in ourselves. Arrogance. So in contrast to the arrogant Babylonians, the righteous people of God live by faith. This verse here is essentially the central message of the book. The verse there, they law themselves, promote their own honor. God is not only revealing Babylon's ultimate end, but acknowledging how his people are to live. While Babylon has confidence in its own power and military, the righteous trust in God and depend on him. So, I mean, when we look at this, you can't help but contrast this to the United States. Do we have confidence in our power and our military might? Absolutely. I mean, those of us that have seen it up close and personal, we got a lot of power and a lot of military might and can do some crazy things that I can't tell you because it's classified, but it is pretty neat. Take it at that. This announcement has distinct relevance to Habakkuk in his personal situation. He needs to move from questioning and complaining to the reality of faith and trust. So, Babylon is consumed with pride. They're consumed with greed. They are consumed with power. Verse 5 of Habakkuk 2. Indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant, never at rest, because he is as greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied. He gathers to himself all the nations and takes captive all the peoples. Babylon has been intoxicated by conquest. They've been conquering everybody around them, taking other land. Their lust to accumulate and conquer has gone to their head just like wine. Their desire to annex more and more nations under the banner is like death itself. It's always looking for more. So then we look in chapter 2, verses 6 through 10, at the woes against Babylon. First one, woe to Babylon because of its thievery. Verses 6 and 7, Habakkuk 2. Woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself wealthy by extortion. How long must this go on? Will not the creditors suddenly arise? Will they not wake up, make you tremble? Then you will become their prey. So God hates arrogance. You know, God hates people who steal, especially those who are gathering it up for themselves and not taking care of the poor. God doesn't hate rich folks. Never has. God hates is when rich folks don't take care of the poor folks, don't share, and when they get it in evil ways. We've seen that through the other minor prophets we've been looking at. Babylon stripped country after country of its assets and took what did not belong to them. Has that ever happened in the past 100 years? Oh, boy, has it. Isn't it crazy? They'll go in there and they plunder, they steal, they take. So,
Babylon spelled it out of the temples.
yeah. Through this exploitation has gone on for a long time. A reversal will suddenly happen. Babylon herself will be conquered, and what she has accumulated will be taken by another. Then woe to Babylon because of its injustice, verses 9 through 11. Woe to him who builds his realm by unjust gain, to set his nest on high, to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many peoples, shaming your own house and forfeiting your life. The stones of the wall will cry out, the beams of the woodwork will echo it. Babylon had no regard for justice. It recognized no sovereignty of nations, no autonomy of any other people. It was only interested in taking and filling its coffers by unjust gain. We're going to go in there, we're going to take everything they have. We're going to steal from them. You know, even in present day, every now and then something will pop up where one country is giving another country back something. So when we lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming, on base there at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, there were these bells that were there. These bells were from the Philippines. They were taken, they were at a church in the Philippines, and these bells were taken. And World War II. These bells were taken. We conquered. We took these bells. Now, a little side note. If you had relatives coming back in World War II, even Korea, maybe Vietnam some, and they had war trophies, like somebody had died and they took a Russian's gun or an AK-47 or something like that, and they brought it back. Well, see, we can't do that anymore. Afghanistan, Iraq, we can't do that. Well, I mean, there are some ways you can get some stuff back, but war trophies, things like that, you can't plunder a land. You can't go in there and find a few bars of gold and decide to ship them back, because they go through all of your stuff. Whenever we would deploy and come back, they go through everything, make sure we didn't have anything. If a soldier got shot and they pulled a bullet out of his leg, he couldn't even bring that back. It's like, well, can I have it? It was in me. No, you can't. Well, leave it in. I'll take it out when I get back. No, you couldn't do anything like that. So anyway, getting back to these bells, back when we used to, yeah, we did that too. I mean, we took these bells, and for many, many, many years, and while we were there in Cheyenne from 2017 to 2000, that's not right, 2014 to 2017, these bells were there. Conquered, taken. We took these bells, Americans. Well, the Filipinos, the government's been trying to get those bells back for years and years and years, and they would write the base commander. Base commander couldn't give them those bells back. Only Congress could do that. And so, finally, not long ago, the American government gave the bells back that they wanted there to the Filipino people. Interesting story. You can look it up sometime. Google Filipino bells at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and you could read about it, why we took them and all. There was a reason why we took them. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I remember looking at those. But we took them. We gave them back. World War II. We finally gave those bells back. My boss, well, not my boss, but a friend of mine who was in the Air Force out there, Filipino. He told me one day, he said, Kevin, those bells need to go back to my people. I said, okay. Now, he's in the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force. I said, okay. Let you and me go take them one night. Okay. You know those things weigh like 400 pounds, right? And I mean, being Filipino, little guy, so I knew on whose back those bells were going to be. It was not us who repatriated the bells to the Philippines, but it was the U.S. government. I had nothing to do with those bells. It's a pretty neat story. Let me get.
Did the hurricane hit last night? Did that just put them back to sleep?
They got a hurricane last night?
And one was coming to them 180 miles an hour.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that. Well, yeah, it's no telling where they are now, then. So, the Babylonians would go and they conquered, they would steal whatever they wanted and destroy the land is what they do. So then woe to Babylon because of its violence, even. Verses 12 and 17 from chapter 2. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed, establishes a town by injustice. The violence you have done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and your destruction of animals will terrify you. For you have shed man's blood, you have destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. You might remember years ago when we went into Baghdad in the Second Gulf War. I think it was the second one where our soldiers were putting up American flags, raising American flags. Oh, our U.S. government was beside themselves. No, don't do that. It's like we're conquering them. Well, I mean, we had. I mean, to be honest with you, we went in there and there wasn't much resistance from them, and we did. But the U.S. government didn't look like we were a conquering force. We were a peacekeeping force, is the way it wanted to be portrayed, and not to be conquered. And for the most part, I mean, we didn't leave there with any of their goods, any of their spoils or whatever. Babylon built its kingdom on the blood and the lives of those it conquered. Lebanon, y'all remember Lebanon, same place was back then, it still is, north of Israel, was a distinctively luxurious region in Palestine, which God promised to his people through both Moses and Joshua. And it was renowned for its magnificent cedars. Yet these forests had been systematically plundered by Babylon. They had in the process slaughtered large animals, large numbers of wild animals, all in the name of empire building. That's what they did. Such violence directed at the created world will return to haunt its perpetrators, and the ruthless exploitation of God's creation will end in retribution. Babylon's violence on earth will be for naught, for only God is glorified. Chapter 2, 13, 14. Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire? That the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So it's useless here for Babylon to try to take glory for themselves through victory and conquest, because glory belongs to God alone. Instead of being polluted with the blood of conquest, there will come a day in which the earth will be permeated with the glory of God. Next, woe. Woe to Babylon because of its idolatry. 18 and 19 of chapter 2. Of what value is an idol carved by a craftsman? Or an image that teaches lies? For the one who makes it trust in his own creation, he makes idols that cannot speak. Woe to him who says to the wood, come to life, or the lifeless stone, wake up. Can it give guidance? It is covered with gold and silver. There's no breath in it. So God here is testing both the foolishness and danger of idolatry. It's foolish because an idol is lifeless, useless, can't speak or act, simply created. It's dangerous because idolatry has immense power in the lives of people who worship it. Idols usurp the place of God in people's lives. Idols fail to perform their intended function, which is salvation and benevolence, but they lead worshipers away from true and living God, right? We don't have idols today, right? Yeah, good. Idolatry is essentially the worship of what we make rather than our maker. That which we make can be found in our possessions, our home, our career, our ambition, our family, anything else. Boats. Thank you. I never worshipped that boat. I took care of that boat. I have you know. We worship them when they become the focal point of our lives and that for which we live. That never became the focal point of my life and was not for which I was living. But it was a pretty nice boat. You know, I'm going to do a sermon on people rejoicing at the heartaches of others. I'm going to expect some people to hit the aisle and come down front.
It's bullying, I tell you.
So, in contrast to the illusion of idolatry is the reality of God. Verse 20, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. Yahweh is the only true God, and all the earth be hushed in his presence. He remains in his temple, and on his throne, even the mighty Babylonian Empire exists firmly under his authority. So then we look at Habakkuk's prayer in Habakkuk 3, 1 through 15. Habakkuk acknowledges God's work in the world and seeks its renewal in his day. He says in verse 2, Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, O Lord. Repeat them in our day and our time. Make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. Habakkuk began complaining of God's indifference and inactivity, but now he is filled with awe. At the beginning of God's dialogue with Habakkuk, he's been told to open his eyes to see what God would be doing among the nations. Habakkuk now registers reverence and wonder because of what he has seen and what he has heard. Habakkuk prays that God will work in the present just as he has in the past. He asks that God remember mercy. Remember mercy in his wrath. Lord, please remember mercy. We like mercy, don't we? Yes, we do. Habakkuk now has no doubt that God will reveal his holy righteous anger against both Judah and Babylon. But as God exacts his justice against sin and oppression, Habakkuk prays once again, that he'll be merciful. Habakkuk is not only acknowledging the dual expressions of God's nature of justice and mercy, but he affirms humanity's need of a God who's gracious and merciful. Habakkuk recalls the great activity of God in Israel's past. He sees God leaving his place in Sinai to come to Egypt to deliver his people from oppression. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens and his praise filled the earth. He refers to the plagues against Egypt, brought deliverance. Verse 5 there. Plague went before him, pestilence followed his steps. He points to God's presence in the wilderness on Mount Sinai. It says, he stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled. The age-old hills collapsed. Verse 7, he refers to God's conquering of nations in the wilderness and in Canaan. I saw the tents of Cushan in distress, the dwellings of Midian in anguish. Then he describes God acts as a warrior fighting for his people. It says, you uncovered your bow, you called for many arrows. He demonstrated himself mightily as he was victorious over wickedness. Maybe this is in reference to Egypt and the Red Sea in verses 11 and 12. It says, sun and moon stood in the heavens at the glint of your flying arrows, at the lightning of your flashing spear. In wrath you strode through the earth, and in anger you threshed the nations. And then verses 13 through 15. You came out to deliver your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot. With his own spear you pierced his head, when his warriors stormed out to scatter us, gloating as though about to devour the wretched who were in hiding. You trampled the sea with your horses, churning the great waters. Like I said, that might have been possibly Egypt and Red Sea. Habakkuk here talking about the greatness of God, and what God can do, and what God had done. And then all of this imagery, Habakkuk acknowledges God's rich heritage of action and intervention on behalf of his people. This rich recollection of the past serves as a reminder of who God is and how he cares for the faithful. Understanding the reality will become the basis of Habakkuk's transforming faith.
He also says, God, do it again.
Yeah, that's what he's wanting.
Yeah,
Hey, you've been merciful in the past.
But
What about now?
You wiped out all of our enemies. You wiped out all the wickedness. Do it again.
Do it, God. So then, Habakkuk's transformation, Habakkuk 3, 16 through 19. Habakkuk trembles before God and acknowledges his trust. Chapter 3, verse 16. I heard and my heart pounded, my lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. Yet I will wait patiently. I will wait patiently for the day of calamity. He's changed his tone from what we read in the first chapter. Saying, okay, I'm going to wait. So the normally loquacious and articulate prophet is left speechless when he sees who God really is and what he truly does. He says, my lips quivered. So hearing God's announcement and being in his presence produces a visceral physical reaction, trembling and shaking. Such is the inevitable response when we encounter God's real nature and hear of God's coming actions. Perhaps Habakkuk's trembling comes from realizing his own presumption and questioning the sovereign God. You know, throughout the Bible, we read of people questioning God sometimes. Remember Job? I love that. I mean, you go right on into God, and then God speaks. Where were you when I did this, when I did that? Where were you? I'm sorry, I think that's funny. But he's just kind of letting him have it. What were you doing all this time? Well, people in the presence of God, talking to God, like as God talking back, can be quite the conversations. Quite the conversations, as we're seeing here. Habakkuk began by asking, how long, O Lord, in Habakkuk 1, verse 2, but now acknowledges he's willing to wait. He's so sure that God's promised judgment against Babylon will occur, he will now bank his life on it. He didn't know the year, the day, or the hour, but he knows it will surely come, and he will wait, talking about faith. He doesn't know when this is going to happen. Will it be in his lifetime? Will it be next week? Will it be 100 years from then? God says it's going to happen. When is it going to happen? Well, I'll wait patiently. So Habakkuk confesses a faith that transcends any earthly circumstances. Verse 17, chapter 3, though the fig tree does not bud, there are no grapes on the vines. Though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen, no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. So you got to kind of live in this society here in the ancient Near East, in this agrarian world, to appreciate this scenario. To a land that depends wholly on harvesting crops and raising livestock, this is a total disaster. Perhaps Habakkuk is referring to the worst case scenario resulting from a foreign invasion. The land has been pillaged and raped, and everything that can keep everything that can keep body and soul together is now gone. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, nothing to wear, only poverty. Yet even in such devastation, Habakkuk affirms that he will continue to rejoice in God. Talking about faith here. Even though you do all these things, I will continue to rejoice in you. It's one thing to rejoice when material blessings are abundant, but it's quite another thing to express joy when all those blessings have been removed. Right? Would you agree to that? It's easy to rejoice when things are abundant, but not so easy when they're gone. Habakkuk has learned to rejoice, not in any particular quantity or quality of abundance, but he's learned to rejoice in God himself. That's what he rejoices in. God remains a cause of great joy because he is who he is. He is the God of salvation. True joy comes not in receiving good things from his hand, but in relying on his steadfast love and saving mercy. Let me say that again. True joy comes not in receiving good things from him. It comes in relying on God's steadfast love and his saving mercy. So if we have our mindset that I will rejoice in God as long as I get that new Toyota four-wheel drive off the showroom floor, I'll rejoice. Thank you, God, for this blessing. And it's okay to give God things for possessions of what he's given you. Everything comes from God anyway. But we should always, first and foremost, give God thanks for his steadfast love and his saving mercy. No matter what. No matter what. Habakkuk affirms an unwavering confidence. Verse 19, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. The prophet acknowledges the reason for his hopefulness in such a bleak situation. Not due to any innate or developed strength of his own, not based on any special technique or formula that brings personal confidence, but it comes solely from God and from him alone. God enables him to be like a deer and climb to the heights. Because of God, Habakkuk can be certain of footing in the most precarious places. He can live with confidence in situations that others would fear. Because of God, Habakkuk will be able to keep climbing, no matter what life may bring. So living by faith. Living by faith is a certain trust, a transcendent joy, and lastly, a steadfast hope. Habakkuk, probably not the most interesting book of the Bible that you've ever read, but and a lot of imagery and things that go on there that you have to think about. And as the prophet Habakkuk is talking, he's kind of upset with God, but then he comes right back around and says, "Okay, I got it. I'll be patient, Lord, because I need to be." But once again, the reading of it can be interesting, and seeing where he's coming from. So, next slide, any questions? There was the front of my now deceased boat. Help me, Rhonda. I'm sorry, sweetie. You know, if I'd known my boat was gonna sink, I'd have never named it after you. So the next one will be Help Me, Rhonda 2.
Again.
Help Me, Rhonda again.
There we go. Give her out.
You know, it's not a very good song if you think about it, because if I'm talking to Rhonda, help me, Rhonda, get her out of my heart, get her out of my life. Uh-oh, that mean there's another woman? I don't need 2 boats with 2 different women's names. Thanks, John. So any thoughts or any questions? Y'all don't seem to have a lot of questions here in the Minor Prophets. Maybe it's because, well, I don't really know what to ask. This stuff can be pretty deep. It can.
Well, there are a lot of people, one of the things you asked was interesting about who questioned God. If you really think about it, there were a lot of people who questioned God. Abraham, Jacob,
David.
Moses, Moses said, well, wait a minute, not me, I can't do that.
Moses protested. Vociferously.
And Abraham said, well, maybe if there's, just 50, right? All the way down to, and we think that we maybe don't question God. I would never do that, but we do.
We do.
If we say,
We
why
do.
me? And who do you think you're questioning other than God? If we say that.
That's the truth. We do. We do question God a lot in our lives. We do. All right. Any other thoughts? So Todd's sermon series on Habakkuk was apparently a lot more interesting than my classroom series on Habakkuk. So I think next week, I do think we have one more week of Habakkuk, if I remember right. So I might just have Todd come preach a sermon for us next week, since he's more captivating. But that's all I have. I appreciate y'all's attention. I hope you have a great week. Call on me if you need anything, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.